Well, hello and welcome to Transform Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services for Alpha Software, broadcasting today from snowy Boston, Massachusetts, where our headquarters are located. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different in Transform. We're in Transform Tuesday. We're going to back up just a little bit. And what we're going to do is just sort of look at Alpha Transform as a whole. The reason I wanted to do that, in case you hadn't noticed, is that we have been gone for, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. And that's because we have been on the road. I've been on the road with Dion. I've been on the road with Greg Bohling, who's in charge of our services department here. And we, during that time, went to meet with a whole bunch of people in Fortune 100s that handle field services and also more local businesses. For example, we've joined the Worcester Chamber of Commerce out in Worcester, Massachusetts. That's Massachusetts' second largest city and a big economic center for us there. And we gave a presentation, and it's the same presentation that I'd like to give to you today. So hopefully you'll find this interesting. I'm still here to answer your Transform questions if you have any. And as always, if you do have questions while this webinar is not in session, you can send them, or even when it is in session, you can send them to tfservice, like Transform, tfservice@alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. To begin, I have another person with me today, Greg Bohling, who is in charge of services here at Alpha Software. Hello, Greg. Are you there? Let me unmute you just in case. Oh, there you go.
I am here. Thank you, Dave.
Excellent. Greg, since just because I'm sitting here alone in the office, in fact, no one else made it in today. I'm the only person. No one else braved the snow. So I guess that makes me in charge. I don't know how the others will feel about that. But I was just wondering, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
And it's coming through. Okay, great. Awesome.
Yep.
Excellent. Great. So let's, I'm going to dive into the OODA Loop, and then Greg is going to give you some examples a little bit later. So you're probably saying, OODA Loop, what is he talking about? Well, let's start right at the beginning, and I will show you. So today I'd like to talk, this will probably go on for 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, I think, about something called the OODA Loop. Now, so, what is the OODA Loop? You may not have heard of this, but you have probably heard of other similar things to the OODA Loop, such as lean manufacturing processes, the 5 Whys, the 5S methodology. You've probably heard of Six Sigma or total quality management, or we did demonstrations on using Kanban, and the Kanban method is also very popular. And these are used in all kinds of different industries. So we're talking anything from hospitality to manufacturing and so on. But there's one other in there called the OODA Loop, and the OODA Loop was developed by this guy, Colonel John Boyd for the United States Air Force. Colonel Boyd was a fighter pilot in the Air Force around World War II in Korea and Vietnam, and I believe he ended his service around 1970 or so. And during that time, the United States had lost a bit of air superiority when it came to plane-to-plane combat. Around World War II or so, it would be typical for every plane, one of ours that got shot down, maybe 11 people or 11 adversaries were shot down on the other side. So it would be, say, a 11 to 1, 12 to 1 ratio. As conflicts began to progress, by the time it got to the Vietnam War, that ratio had gone way down to about 2 to 1. And so, we were losing a fair number of airplanes, and we were trying to figure out what is going on. I mean, after all, the technology had actually gotten significantly better since the 1940s up until the 1960s. So Colonel Boyd was tasked by the Pentagon as a military strategist to sort of figure out what's going on. And what he came up with was something called OODA. So OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. And we're going to go through those 4 briefly here. So if you think about observe from the context of let's keep with the plane analogy. From the context of being a fighter pilot, observe means, seeing, oh, look, there are aircraft on the distance, or there is some sort of obstacle, or there's a mountain range, or there's weather ahead. Just taking a look at what's going on around you is just the observe part of it. The next part, which is closely related to observe, is to orient. Just sort of figure out where in space you are with relation to these other things. What is my altitude? How fast am I flying? What is my direction? And so forth. Next up is decide. Okay, I've seen what are potential threats, and I know where I am and where I'm headed. What should I do about it? That's the decide phase. And then finally act, that's the doing something about it portion. And then after acting, you go back to observing and you repeat this loop again. Now, we all do this. This is not some special thing. But what Colonel Boyd observed was, if you do these quicker, if you move from one to the other, even if you don't do them perfectly, you'll end up with a better result in lots of different things, not just in flying fighter planes. So he was noticing that the pilots who tended to win, regardless of what side they were on, were really good at moving quickly through this OODA loop. They could observe, orient, decide, act, and then go right back into observing. So based on that, a new set of airplanes and a new set of techniques and training was initiated. And let me just show you the results of a little bit of OODA thinking and how that influenced the design of aircraft. And then later on, we're going to get into how this actually applies to you. So if we take a look at the observe portion of it, on the left of my screen is a picture of an F-4 jet fighter. And on the right is the F-16 jet fighter. And if you'll notice, the canopies, the windshields, are really quite different between those two. In the one on the right, the pilot has far more visibility, and that's the newer design. The idea to be able to observe was to actually also be able to look around, not just rely on what's on the instruments, but actually have a better field of vision. In the F4, you could probably only see what was on top of you. If you were the person in front, you could see a little bit to the side and a little bit to the front. But with a new design, you could do observations much more quickly and much more accurately. Moving on to Orient, how high am I? Which speed am I going? Which direction am I going? And so on. If you'll take a look at these two cockpits, now of course technology improved over those 20 years, but what you'll notice is there are far fewer controls. There are far fewer things to actually look at. The interface, the user experience between the F4 and the F-16 was greatly simplified, so that it didn't take nearly as long to figure out, okay, how fast am I going, which way am I headed, and so on. And then to make it even more interesting, when we get into the decide aspect of it, something that the older planes didn't have was an onboard computer that could actually identify other things that are in the air with you. Are these enemy fighters who might be trying to shoot at you, or are these friendly fighters that you should not be shooting at? And which way are they headed? Are they retreating? Are they coming at you? Which one is closest? Which one is the biggest threat? By using a computer, they were able to decide these things much quicker. As far as acts, no doubt weapon systems have improved and stuff. I'm not going to really cover that as part of this presentation. But the question is, where else can you use OODA Loop? Now, it was really fascinating when I did a search for OODA Loop on Google. And I have to credit Dion McCormick, no relation, who's our lead solutions engineer here, for coming up with this whole concept of OODA Loop as it may apply to software. Once I started poking into it, I realized that lots and lots of people were talking about the OODA Loop, and they're showing up in basically every type of industry that you can think of. And an awful lot of it is happening in healthcare, which you think is funny to go from military to healthcare, but that's how it is. And even in field service, hospitality, manufacturing, and really a lot more than that. So one question is, and since you guys are all here for TransForm Tuesday, where we talk about mobile technology, is what does that have to do with mobile technology? What is OODA? How is that going to improve the processes of businesses that are functioning? And we'll go over a little bit. And again, we're keeping this fairly high level. Once I get through the high level stuff, though, I'm going to show you, well, I'm not going to show you, Greg is going to show you some specific examples of things that have been built out, which I think you're going to find interesting. So top level, when you're doing the observe part of the OODA loop, just think about your phone now. It now has the ability to capture photos and multimedia and sounds and all kinds of things. You could perform barcode scans, so you can find out specifically what something is without having to type it in by hand, possibly makes mistakes, have to rekey things and so on. Nowadays, you actually have the ability to do Internet of Things communications. We've recently introduced a Bluetooth plugin into TransForm. We haven't fully exposed it yet, but we're going to start getting more into that, and we'll talk about that in the weeks to come. And probably the simplest example of the IoT communications would be like your car diagnostic tools. When you bring your car to the mechanic, it's making a funny sound. One thing they'll do is they'll plug their computer into your car's computer, and it'll say, aha, here's an error code this, showing an oxygen sensor has failed, or whatever else it wanted to do. And then the last thing are smart checklists. Now, checklists have been around for a while. They started in aviation in the early 1900s. But smart checklists are being used everywhere. And so even in surgery, for example, where they were never used, they've now become the standard in the last 10 years, is to look through everything. Do we have all of the stuff here? Is everything checked off on the patient? Do we know everything that we need to do for this procedure? Does everyone know each other's names? Things like that. And with smart checklists, you can have embedded business logic actually decide, oh, look, I'm examining this piece of equipment. Here are the types of things I should be looking for. So they can become more aware. And so moving on to the Orient section of it, you'll think about once you do a barcode, well, what are you going to do with that information? Well, you probably want to look it up from a database, or maybe see what the service history is on a piece of equipment, or whatever it is for your particular industry. Orient, of course, you'd have to lump GPS into that category. That literally tells you where you are. But Orient could also be, what is the situation? And sometimes looking up reference materials or things like that, or how-to videos right on your phone can really orient you as to help you move on to the next step, which is the decide step. And so the decide step, again, we're back to embedded business logic. Does it make sense for me to do this replacement right now? How much service should be left on this? What should I check for, and so on? But decide can also have an element of communications. And one thing you might want to do is contact another tech who also has the app that you're running, and ask them a quick question. Look, I've never come across one of these boilers before. Do you have any advice for this? And then a special type of communications, of course, is an escalation. Look, this is turned out to be a bigger job or a bigger project, or it turned out to be something really important. Before I proceed, I'm going to need to talk to someone higher up to evaluate what I should do next. And escalation is the way to do that. And it's a type of communication that you could decide in the D phase of the OODA loop. Finally, we come to ACT, and with ACT, if you think about what can the mobile app actually do, well, what it can do is fill out paperwork. I mean, you might be collecting the data, but it can put it back into those same PDF forms that you might be required to turn in. It can also kick off a workflow. It can say, well, I'm done with this form. Now it's time to let the next person come in. For example, we were speaking week before last, in Worcester, and one of the people there was in construction. So a common workflow in construction, especially if you have a team of subcontractors working underneath you, is to say, okay, well, the plumbing is done. Now we need to contact the plumbing inspector. The electrical is done. We need to contact the electrical inspector. They're both done. Now we need to contact the insulation people. Okay, the installation is done. Now we need to contact it, and it just goes through the workflow, move from person to person to person without having to necessarily have anyone sit on that process. Of course, they can always see where things are on a dashboard where the workflow is, but it's not doesn't have to be babysat, and it's something that computers can handle very quickly. And then the last part of ACT, of course, is moving back into the loop again, starting that OODA loop one more time, and a dispatch is the way of doing that. You fill out a form, you say, I'm done with this job, and you're automatically dispatched a new piece of work to work on. So that is OODA in a nutshell as being used in with mobile technology out in the business field. But that's all fairly high-level stuff, and I know a lot of you here are technical, so let's get into the weeds a little bit, and that's why I brought Greg Bohling in, who's overseen actually quite a few customer projects. Hello, Greg, are you still there? I see that you're mute. Oh, fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter, and maybe you could show us a few screenshots and maybe talk us through a little bit about what you've done and how mobile apps can help people with their OODA loop.
Sure.
Okay, so I've made you the presenter.
Show the right screen.
That's always the trick, isn't it? Yep.
Which one is it? This one. There we go.
I'm looking at a web browser.
All right. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Great.
Yeah. So, as Dave had mentioned, the OODA loop kind of helps you with, sort of speeding up your processes, speeding up your transformation and moving forward and things like that. And so, the first thing, as I look at that and say, well, how do you apply that, is to think about, well, if I'm going to, make a change to my business, I need to understand what the benefits are going to be to me. And so if I'm going to take a mobile initiative, for example, what kind of benefits am I going to see from that? What is mobile bringing in the act phase that will help us do more profitable business, do more business, be more efficient, and things like that. So I think the very first one to highlight is just data accuracy. So what I've got on the screen here is a paper form that's been filled out and a TransForm form beside it to show that and there's a lot of paper still being used in the world, and there's a lot of really lousy handwriting like mine, which is the example here on the screen. So there's a lot of data entry error that happens just through the paper process. So that's one immediate benefit with a mobile transformation, is that you're going to clean up your data entry. And with something like TransForm, you've got mobile optimized controls that give you pick lists and buttons and date pickers and things like that. You can do data lookups. So I can scan a barcode and get exactly the right information into my form instead of having to transcribe something or things like that. In addition, as Dave kind of touched on, is you have richer data available to you, over like a paper process, right? Photos, the annotation, signatures, GPS, barcodes, timers, there's stopwatches, there's all kinds of great things in there that let you, get more data, which helps you then, that's in your observe phase. It helps you get, a better sense of where you are and what's out there, and make a more informed decision as you're moving through. Probably my favorite benefit is that it gets you closer to where the action is. So, in this case, paper is very portable, and, doing entry on a computer through a web browser or a thick client or something can be very accurate, but sort of the sweet spot is right in the middle with the smartphone or a tablet or something like that, right? So now I can be right in front of the issue at hand, and I can collect my data there, and I can fill out my information that I need, and I can capture photos and all kinds of things right there on site, right there in front of it, disconnected, and really get the best, most accurate, most timely information that I can then act on. Certainly we can save money, right? So we can reduce time per activity. We can sort of address quality issues. We can avoid downtime. We can, report incidents quickly. We can mitigate risk. So we can do safety checklists. We can, do audits and things like that to say, hey, even if we did have an incident, at least we've covered all the bases, and we're not liable for that because we did what we were supposed to do. And we can validate all of that, and we can prove it. So those are just some of the, quick benefits of sort of going mobile and kind of how that works. So to get there, though, there's a lot of common challenges that, people will run into in trying to do a mobile transformation. So the first one is cost, right? So, it costs a lot of money if you say, hey, I've got 1,000 employees, and if I got to buy them all a tablet, and I've got to buy all this software, and I've got to do a big implementation project, and that's a daunting amount of money that you might have to invest to collect a little bit of data that's a little more accurate. So really the solution to kind of that is to do it incrementally, and this is where that sort of quickly going through the OODA loop sort of pays off, right? And it's similar to agile development. But what you find is it works in business just as well as it does in development. So you start small, you think big, but you start small, and you pick one little area and say, I can get some improvement here, and I can do a minimal investment and have a sort of a pilot or a small, one little area that I've addressed. And then once I've finished it, then I can move on to the next thing and the next thing, right? So I'll reorient, I'll reobserve, I'll reorient as I go through it. Another challenge that I see often is that people are all about going mobile, and we need an app, and we have to be mobile, but it's really just a solution, and they don't know what the problem they're trying to solve is. So the key there is to really focus on your processes, your business processes, see where mobile can actually create some efficiency. So you really have to understand what your business process is today and sort of identify where things are getting hung up. So, versus just saying, hey, we really need an app, and we roll it out to 1,000 people and it actually doesn't do what they need it to do, because, the thing that was slowing us down is actually the fact that, certain people don't work on Tuesdays, and no mobile app, solves that particular problem, things like that. And then, final challenge that I'll throw on there is technical limitations. So there's a lot of products out there. There's a lot of mobile. There's a lot of other computer systems out there, obviously. Not all of them play well with others. And so what you really want to do when you're sort of evaluating, going mobile, adding mobility to a business process, is to figure out, tools that you can plug into the existing process to plug into the existing system. And this is where TransForm really, shines. TransForm was designed from the ground up to be integrated with other systems. It was designed to be able to be added to a technology stack without, having to displace something. You don't have to change your business process around to plug a mobile solution in there. And it can work with existing backend systems. So, how do you get from point A to point B? This is kind of a slight inversion of the OODA loop, in that you need to understand the business processes. You need to understand where mobile can improve it. You need to kind of observe and orient yourself with your business and and say, hey, this is where the problems are, and so now how do I apply solutions? Make sure you start small, right? As I said before, think big, understand the big picture. We want to, solve a lot of problems, and we have solutions for those, but, use a pilot project or proof of concept, get quick wins, and then expand that sort of as a jawbreaker, right? A layer or a hailstone, where you start small and you just build out and build out and build out each layer. Another key is to involve the line of business. And this goes back to, you can be right where the action is. Those people that do the work know the issues, right? So, a good example would be, it turns out that some efficiency issues on a shop floor boil down to the fact that the workers don't use one of 3 pieces of identical equipment because it's a little jittery, right? Or sometimes it just doesn't work as well. But nobody ever sat down and listened to their issues. So they're like, well, we should be load balanced across three machines, and why is our output not as much as we want? It's because we're bottlenecking, because people are waiting on maintenance on one of those machines, or they just would rather stand there and wait for the other one to become available to do their task, rather than deal with something that has a lot of additional work that needs to be done. So, and then finally, to sort of evaluate your technology, right? So you want a flexible platform. You want to make sure your solutions can interface with existing systems. You don't really want to upend IT's apple cart. As we know, as I've been in IT before, you can get a little cranky sometimes. And so, if you can, come in with some minimal disruption to all the other systems that are in place that have reason for being there, then, certainly things will go a little bit smoother. So, with that, Dave, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks very much.
Sure.
Don't have a lot more to add. I know most of the folks here are regulars, but if you do have any questions, by all means contact us. Send an email to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. If you have a particular use case that you would like to go over, we may have some ideas based on talking to other people. So as I like to say, if you supply the ooh, we can help supply the duh part of it. So today's presentation is coming to an end. If there are any questions, go ahead and ask them in the questions box so they go to webinar control panel. If not, always can send an email to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. We'll be back next week. We'll be diving a little bit more into the weeds. I believe we're going to be taking a look at the design of apps for different screen sizes and how that layout function works. So hope to see you then. That looks like it for questions. So, hey, thanks very much. Thanks, Greg, for presenting. I appreciate it. Thanks for everyone for showing up. We'll see you next Tuesday. Take care and goodbye.